What is up, Waffle Gang? I do hope you are well. My name is Mark, and today we're covering some more r/am I the butthole. If you'd like to skip the initial waffle, timestamps are in the description and along the timeline below. But if you are new here, please consider hitting that like, that subscribe, and maybe that notification bell too. Now, just a huge thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here. Investing it in the channel. It's absolutely amazing of you. So thank you so much. And with that being said, let's just get straight in to today's stories. Much love, guys. Now, our first story comes from Constant Profit. Am I the arsehole for pretending not to know my wife when she blew up at an old lady? I am 23 male and my wife is 24 female. She is a lovely person and absolutely not the sort to blow up for no reason. However, hormones have taken toll on her as she enters her second trimester. Things have been a little tense. Earlier we were at a grocery store and I had our 2 female daughter while my wife was in the dairy aisle. We were a few feet away when I heard some old lady ask my wife how far along she was. My wife answered. I assumed all was well when I heard my wife go, "You don't touch somebody's stomach without asking them. How would you feel if I did that to you, huh? Are you fucking dumb?" I turned to stare at them, only to find out the whole store was staring at them as well. I didn't know what to do, and didn't know how to defend my wife's words against an old lady with a walker, and so I turned back around and continued to browse a cookie display. My wife didn't say anything, just walked away, and after a moment or two, I followed her, only to find that she was pissed off, not at the lady, but me, for just turning around and pretending not to know her. She accused me of not caring about her enough to defend her, then took our daughter from me so that she could give me the cold shoulder. I've been thinking about this for a while and honestly torn. On the one hand, I was embarrassed and didn't want to cause a scene, but she's my wife and I should have been there for her. Gee whiz, let's hope this story was a while back and not during this whole pandemic, because that would make it even 10 times worse, just going up and touching someone. But yes, in general, we just do not touch anyone. I don't know what it is about pregnant women that people think they can just go up and rub their tummies. It's just so weird that people think they can do that. They have permission to do that because there's a child inside them. Yes, I can just go and rub that person's tummy and away we go. And would he have acted the same? I don't know. If a male did that, went, "Oh, you're pregnant," and started rubbing her tummy, how would he have reacted then? Do you think he would have reacted the same way? Just a question that's going through the old bonds here. But the world's worst warlock says, "You're the arsehole, dude. A stranger touched your wife without her consent, and your response is to pretend you don't know her. Come on. I don't blame your wife for going off on that woman. People for some ungodly reason tend to act like pregnant people are public property, and it's freaking aggravating to ward off grabby hands from nosy strangers." And the judgy witch says, and quotes, "An old lady with a walker." And it says, "You're the arsehole, the old lady too. Yes, she's old and frail, but that's not all she is. She's an adult with decades of experience that should have taught her not to touch strangers' bodies, whether there is a baby in there or not. You shouldn't have pretended you didn't know your wife. You should have been there to help her move away." Stuck with this one says, "You're the arsehole. You didn't defend your pregnant wife against a stranger touching her body without permission. And then you ignored her like she wasn't your wife." Stairs says, info, "What if a man touched her instead of the old woman? I do think you'd care. Your wife would and did because she is being touched either way. Your wife was touched without her consent. Everyone sucks here except the wife," and quote, "absolutely not the sort of person to blow up for no reason." And then says, "There is a reason to blow up. Her body, also pandemic." And quotes, "However, hormones have taken a toll on her, and as she enters her second trimester, things have been a little tense." And then says, "You're blaming her reaction on hormones, not the blatant disrespect to her bodily autonomy. You also ignored her in the store and didn't stand up for her or comfort her. Thanks for the awards. OP, please think about the first question. Old lady versus dude touching your wife without her consent." And Disney Freak says, "You're the arsehole. Someone touched your wife during a pandemic and made your pregnant wife uncomfortable in public. You just blame it on hormones and pretend not to know her, to avoid causing scenes. You're going to do the same thing when your toddlers inevitably have tantrums in public? Will you just walk away from them instead of doing something about it? Your wife could have used nicer words, but she has the right to not be touched if she didn't ask for it, even by little old ladies with a walker. What if it had been an old man with a walker? Seriously." Now, I'm going to turn it to you guys, and I wonder if any of you have ever been in this situation. We've had lots of pregnant people in the comments before. Have you ever been in the situation where people think they have the right to touch your stomach? I know people don't have the right anyway to touch your body in any way whatsoever, but for some reason people seem drawn to pregnant women and think that they can just rub your tummies. Let me know in the comments below. And our next story is from a throwaway account. Am I the arsehole for telling my 19 male cheating dad that I didn't care about him and my stepfather has been a better father than him? So my mother and father have been divorced for 4 years. They divorced because my father had multiple affairs behind my mother's back. His affairs and cheating involved 3 of my teachers. One was my cheerleading coach, whom I was very close to. My dad knew this and got involved with her anyways. When it came out, it somehow became public knowledge at my high school. It was a smaller private school and word spread fast. My mum only found out because one of my dad's mistresses supposedly got jealous and told her, so I'm assuming my cheerleading coach told a teacher that she'd been sleeping with my dad and that teacher spoke around, and weird, it got to other teachers. Word probably passed from teachers to other students and eventually everyone knew. I haven't had much contact with my dad. I pretty much completely cut him out of my life as he wasn't a stellar father to me to begin with. He was much closer to my sister than me, and they still talk. My father wants me and my sister to spend Christmas with him this year. I do not want to, but my sister does. She told my dad this and my dad called me to express his anger about me not going. He said it's incredibly messed up that I don't want to spend one day with him even though he's my dad. I told him that he was a shit dad. He got mad at me and went off on me. I told him that a good dad wouldn't have banged teachers that were close to me while married to my mum. I then said that my new stepdad has been a better father figure to me than he ever was. This led to my dad trying to equate what he did to something I did. Almost a year ago, I got drunk at a frat party and I cheated on my girlfriend in some ways. I told within a week it happened and my girlfriend decided she wanted to forgive me and I'm still with her and never will do that again. And he compared this to having more than 5 different mistresses behind his wife of 22 years back. I thought it was complete bullshit and ended the conversation and hung up. My dad apparently told my sister and my mum and they are both upset with me. My sister because she's a daddy's girl who thinks I'm an arsehole for not giving my dad a chance despite also being a cheater. And my mum for saying what I did, which she felt was needlessly cruel for me to say even though it might be true. I feel like I'm in a fucking madhouse. Am I the arsehole? Now, I hate to say it, but this is just part of the fallout from cheating. You know, you've turned people against you. That's what will happen if you cheat on your partner. And it's just a shame that OP now is stuck in the middle between 2 arguing parents, which is absolutely ridiculous. And for your father to play that card, I'm your father, so you should sort of respect me in some ways. Hell no, you cheated, you know. If it's the truth that your stepfather has been a better father, sure, it might hurt his feelings, but he also needs to know this as well, I think. There's probably better ways of wording it, but you got it out there, and I think it's good to get it out there to say, look, you have been a bad father to me, and you need to step up if you still want to be a part of my life. Because at the moment, he's just pushing you away, and he seems like he's going to continue to go down this path. He just seems like that kind of person. I don't know. We shall see in the future, I guess. Or maybe not. But Miss Barney Fife says, not the arsehole. You're allowed to express your feelings to your father when he's berating you. And why can't your sister go see him by herself? And Foible Schmoible says, not the arsehole, you said it perfectly yourself. He blew up both your home and school life. He broke his vows with a series of sustained affairs over years with people closely connected to his family. And his attempt to equate years of choices with what I do believe was a mistake on your part, aged 18, that you took responsibility for, was just a desperate and stupid thing to do. Side note, who the hell were these teachers who blatantly knew he was married and did this anyway? Does he have a magic penis? Or does your school just attract awful people to teach there? An apprehensive mess says, not the arsehole, it sucks being the kid stuck between parents with cheating involved. For me it was my mum with best friend's husband and our entire social circle cut us all off because of it. People don't understand how ostracised you feel when one of your parents cheat and the entire school finds out. I personally no longer speak with my mother and haven't for over 7 years. The sad thing is, like my mother, your father will probably never accept his actions were wrong and affected you in a way he'll never understand. Your mum's a sweetheart though for being angry at what you said to him. Bless her. And Camilek says, not the arsehole, I understand why he wants you there, but a good father would never force you to spend time with him based on the I'm your father crap. Also, a good father would never compare your relationships and affairs to his. It's not a competition about who was the shittiest in that department. That's messed up. Now, I'm going to turn it to you guys. What do you think about the situation and how can OP deal with it going forward? It must be incredibly difficult to be in the middle of 2 parents like this, you know, when cheating's involved. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And our next story comes from Powerful Bat. Am I the arsehole for collecting child support money I don't need when it means my ex probably won't be able to retire? My ex-husband and I always planned to have 3 children. Inexplicably several months Into our third pregnancy, he completely changed his mind and insisted that we give up for adoption, citing a few ridiculous reasons. He asked for a divorce and 50-50 custody of just our older two, Sam and Beth, when our youngest Anne was born, and I refused to give her up. The judge ordered him to pay half the college cost for all three in addition to a hefty child support for Anne, as he made a huge career change trying to get out of support, but he was instead ordered to pay at the previous rate. To my ex's credit, he has been by all accounts been a doting father to Sam and Beth, even though he's refused to ever meet Anne. I eventually remarried a man who came to love and raise the kids as his own. Because our state doesn't reduce a bio parent's financial obligation due to the income of the step-parent, the dual income allowed my husband and I to raise the kids very comfortably, while my ex still pays support for Anne, 13, and Beth, 16, now that she's choosing to live just with us. As we don't need it for daily expenses, the support money has always been banked for their future needs, split evenly among the three kids. My ex's parents were furious at his decision to cut out Anne and redirect his inheritance to Anne. Initially this made sense to me, as I figured it would go to Anne's therapy bills to deal with the damage of being abandoned by her father while her siblings were accepted and loved by him. But as it turns out, Anne is seemingly unfazed by it. Her stepfather has been Dad her entire living memory, and she's never shown any sign of feeling left behind or unworthy. So Anne will enter adulthood with her future needs fund intact, in addition to the $250,000 trust fund. Beth and Sam will be getting future needs funds comprised mostly of their sister's child support money, in addition to my husband and I fully covering their educational desires. My issue is that Sam, 19, has both decided against an education and begun to bristle over his dad's anger at the child support bills. Due to my ex's career change, it looks like he won't be able to retire despite being in increasingly poor health, although the kids don't know that support money is being saved for them. Thanks to my ex, they do know about Anne's trust fund, and Sam begun to get at Anne to promise to give their dad his inheritance when her fund matures, in addition to insisting I drop Anne's support order, which my husband is totally against. Now that Sam is an adult, my options for forcing him into family therapy are limited, and I feel increasingly bad about lying by omission about the future fund, though I know he'd just give it to his dad. But there is a huge rift now between Sam and his sisters. Sam hates me for being greedy, and he adopted some rather radical outlooks because of it. Am I the arsehole? My husband says no, but I'm terrified at how this has changed my relationship with Sam. It sounds like, and it might be just me, that there's some talking going on in the background here between Sam and the dad, and resentment's building up over time over what he's been saying. I might be totally wrong in saying that, but that's just the way it feels to me. But he cut Anne off. Who does that to a child at a young age? Who decides, you've got two children, but I'm not going to accept one of them? That's absolutely awful behaviour. And then to sort of, a demotion in your career path to try and get out of child support in some way, that's a legal obligation and moral too. Let's not forget that. So, it's absolutely crazy behavior from him. I think you need to just sit down with Sam and be blunt as possible. Just tell him the truth about what's happened in the past. Just be out with it all and then let him decide. Then it's up to him, But I think you're doing right here, and I think you should continue what you're doing. But cake is a die, says not the arsehole. Sit down with your son Sam and tell him that at this point, neither he or Sam have any say in regarding what the grandparents want to give her. That money is the grandparents' decision. Tell the grandparents to make adjustments to the trust fund that limit their access until she is older, say 25 to 30, or anything outside of her educational health needs. If you want to save money for Sam, do the same with the excess funds. Make sure all kids equal in this amount, and consider holding the funds in a trust until the kids are either in education or 25 to 30. Ensure that Sam is starting to be treated like an adult if he's not in education, and give him a timeline to move out or start paying rent. You can put this in a separate college fund if you want to return the funds to him. Separate note, it seems so weird to me to reject just the youngest. I can only imagine that he thought you were cheating on him. And Terry says, not the arsehole, your ex intentionally chose to change his career to one that was less lucrative, and he did so in an attempt to avoid a legal obligation. Anne should not give her biological father a dime. It is his own fault he chose to make more money, and his own fault he was disinherited. And Lotta Farron says, not the arsehole, you are not the reason he won't be able to retire. It's his changing job to try and get out of child support that will. It's his fault his own parents disowned him and gave your youngest the fund. He's a miserable man who's turning your oldest against you. I'd close the fund made for your oldest, give it to him and say, so whatever you want with it, but that's all you're getting from me. He can decide if he wants to give it to his father. You need to try and create a separation from the youngest and oldest. The bullying will only get worse. Now, I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What would you do in this situation? Bow down to what Sam is saying, and pay the father some money? Or would you go down a different route and say, like, no, he caused this mess, so now he has to deal with it? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And our next story is from Cameras on Wife. Am I the arsehole for having cameras inside our house to check up on my wife? Oh god. I, 32 male, have been with my wife Lisa, 29 female, for 7 years. She's 6 months pregnant with triplets, and these are our first kids. We're very excited, and I'm super proud of her for being so strong throughout everything. Here's the issue. When I was 19, my girlfriend and I were at her house in separate places. I was downstairs and she was upstairs. I remember calling for her and not thinking anything of it when she didn't answer. But when I later went to find her, she had fallen and hit her head, and unfortunately, she passed away. I'm still in therapy for it, but I honestly don't see the guilt ever going away. Lisa is amazing and very understanding about this, and she does little things to help, like telling me where she's going and keeping her phone charged so we can always reach each other. I don't get panic attacks or anything when I don't know where she is, and I don't ask her to do this, but knowing her location does put me at ease a lot. My youngest sister Amy, 29 female, recently got divorced because her husband was too controlling. My wife and I have allowed her to stay at our house for a little while so she can get back on her feet, but the agreement was that she moves out when the babies are born. She moved in when Lisa was 3 months along. Amy openly thinks I'm a creep for marrying someone the same age as her. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but Amy thinks it's incestuous. Nobody else in our family thinks it's weird, but Amy insists that it is. We decided to look past this and let her stay for a while though. Amy seems to have a major issue with Lisa and I knowing each other's location, and keeps telling Lisa that I'm being too possessive over her and that she needs to set boundaries in our relationship. Amy told her that what we do is manipulative and abusive and constantly tells Lisa to leave me. Lisa and I have cameras in our home. It's quite a large house in an expensive part of town, and we were burgled last year, so we set up cameras around. I do not spy on my wife at all. The cameras aren't even on half the time, but sometimes if I call her and she doesn't reply, or if there's no noise coming from where she is, then I'll turn on the camera and check see if she's okay. I never do this normally, but I'm just very scared because she's pregnant too. Lisa is 100% aware of this, and she said it's not that bad, because I only use the cameras to check like once in a blue moon, but Amy insists that it's weird and a breach of Lisa's privacy. I do appreciate her being there for my wife and showing that she does care, but it genuinely does hurt my feelings that she thinks I'm a monster. I wanted to kick her out ages ago, but Lisa objected due to Amy's divorce and the pandemic. Lisa has spoken to Amy several times and tells her she's not in any danger, but Amy refuses to listen. Again, nobody else but Amy thinks this is weird, but maybe she is right and the rest of us are wrong. I'm going to speak to my therapist about this, but I just wanted an outside opinion on this. Am I the arsehole? It sounds like your sisters went for a hard time and she can't get over that, and now she's starting to pass her own issues onto your relationship too, which is just not on. And when I first read that title, I thought, oh no, this isn't going to be good. This isn't going to be good at all. But I think you got a completely valid reason for everything you've been through. And your wife is cool with it. She's absolutely fine with it. So I don't see a problem with it either. If your wife did have a problem with it, then yeah, it's a completely different issue. But your wife's cool with it. And this is down to your sister. And I think in this situation, your sister just does need to move out because she's causing more issues at the moment. And this is, very much her problem that she needs to deal with herself right now. But Curian says, and quotes, Amy openly says she thinks I'm a creep for marrying someone the same age as her. Then says, Amy is wacko, seriously, she's 3 years off from you. With an age gap that close, if you refuse to have a relationship with someone simply because they were the same age as Amy, that would be weird. This is between you and your spouse. If your spouse is okay with it, then it's fine. If she's not, then it isn't. End of story. Amy's an arsehole and needs to mind her own effing business, not the arsehole. And 5 Pink Toes says, not the arsehole, but reading that Amy, your sister, thinks it's incestuous because you married a woman the same age as her did set off bells, whistles, horns, sirens and red flags exploded in the middle of my room. So there's that. And 11 says, not the arsehole, your wife is aware of the cameras and agrees to their use. You have a major problem with your sister. She talks poorly about you and is trying to convince your wife to leave you. You need to get her to move out ASAP. And LNG says, not the arsehole, I recommend your sister seek therapy. The red flag was that you're incestuous for dating someone the same age as her. Didn't realise your sister had a claim on all 29-year-olds, period. And Redditor Cliche says, not the arsehole, your sister just came out of a bad relationship and is projecting her issues onto your relationship. Your wife is aware of everything and says it's fine and don't worry about it. Honestly, your sister needs to go to therapy to deal with her relationship and why she thinks a 3-year age difference is creepy. Now, I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What would you do in this situation? How would you feel about it? Do you think the cameras are right to have in the home even though the wife agrees with it, or do you think not? And what do you think about the sister? How would you deal with her? Let us know in the comments below. Now, once again, guys, thank you for being here today. I hope you did enjoy today's stories. I'm having a blast just recently. And, you know, I still get people asking, so I have to say it. But if you do want to support the channel further, you can through YouTube membership. There's a join button down below where you can click there and you can choose whichever tier you want. Or you could head on over to Patreon, where there is a link in the description and you can support there too. It is always really appreciated. And, you know, as I said, in January, we're going to be going part-time YouTube. I'm very, very nervous about that. But that sort of support really, really does help. It gives some kind of stability towards it, you know, because YouTube could drop me at any moment. There's always that little worry there. But I try not to worry about that too much, especially when you guys are backing me up along the way. It really does help out. So thank you so, so much for everything you do. And I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Much love.